Hello everyone, and welcome to World War II at 80. I'm Ron May, your host, author, historian, and speaker on World War II history and the stories of those who served. We continue with our third episode today, which focuses on the events and stories of March 1944. March 1944 brought cautiously optimistic news for the U.S. from all the war fronts. In the Southwest Pacific, U.S. forces landed on the Admiralty Islands on Leap Day, February 29th. The island chain was located a short distance northeast of New Guinea and offered an excellent anchorage for ships. The mission, codenamed Operation Brewer, involved the U.S. Army's 1st Cavalry Division. They landed on Los Negros, the third largest of the islands. The soldiers engaged in heavy combat with the Japanese forces. There was significant progress throughout the month of March. By March 14, 2 more islands in the Admiralty chain were seized by U.S. forces, and 3 days later, on March 17, it was reported that U.S. forces had landed on the main island of Manus, and on March 20, that Americans had come close to completing the sweep of the island chain. Combat operations would last until May, but by March, the handwriting seemed to be on the wall, pointing to a U.S. victory. Good news also came out of the China-Burma-India theater. Japanese forces were finally in retreat by the end of March. Japan had occupied Burma since 1942. The Burmese thought that supporting Japan would help them get rid of the British colonial government and allow Burma to become independent. Japan had other plans and installed a puppet government instead. When the Burmese finally realized that Japan was not going to give them freedom, they became part of the alliance against Japan. At the beginning of March 1944, the Japanese army attempted to invade northeastern India, shown with the bold red arrows on the map above. They were turned back by Allied forces, made up mostly of British and Gurkhas, at the Battle of Impal, where the Japanese experienced heavy losses. Japan's defeat and subsequent retreat marked the turning point of the Burma campaign and the start to a receding boundary for Japanese-held territory in Southwest Asia. Meanwhile, in the European theater, the campaign in south-central Italy raged on throughout the month of March. The fighting at Monte Cassino continued with the commencement of the third battle on March 15th. The monastery on the mountaintop had been destroyed by Allied bombers the month previous, in February. The town of Cassino, at the base of the mountain, was the victim of aerial bombardment in March. The German holdout in the region was progressively weakening under continued Allied pressure. Like every month in the war, March was also a month of significant losses in human life. This was especially true for several families in Morgan County, Indiana. The losses were all accidents. Sergeant Paul Prather, who grew up east of Martinsville, succumbed to death from a fractured skull following a fatal accident in England on March 19th. Less than a week later, Staff Sergeant Paul Eugene Prescott tragically died in a March 25th plane crash in Dakar, Africa. The 1941 graduate of Mooresville High School was a radioman gunner on a B-17 bomber, which crashed en route to England. These deaths by accident followed 2 others that had occurred a month earlier in February. This time, the accidents happened stateside. Aviation cadet Eddie Magenheimer of Mooresville, Indiana, died on February 1st in a training plane crash in the southwest United States. The 22-year-old trainee had graduated from Mooresville High School in 1939 and was stationed at Marana Field in Tucson, Arizona. He was due to receive his wings shortly before his accident. Grief came to another Mooresville family 2 weeks later, following a February 14th plane crash in Kansas. Flight Officer Harry Wilson, Jr., a 1942 Mooresville High School graduate, was killed in a mid-air collision with another training plane near Strother Field in Winfield, Kansas. Wilson had been home visiting his family in Mooresville just days before his untimely death. Age 20, Wilson and his aviation student were on a night flying test when their plane was hit by another aircraft midair. Their wing was knocked off, causing their plane to plummet to the ground. Both instructor and student were killed. These deaths were tragic reminders of the danger of training for war in the skies. During World War II, more than 13,000 American aviators lost their lives in training accidents at home before they ever faced the enemy. Meanwhile, the fourth war loan drive in the United States had just been completed. Back the Attack was the name for the drive. Morgan County, Indiana, exceeded their goal of raising $500,000 for the war effort through the purchase of war bonds. Both on the war front and the home front, Americans were meeting the challenges in 1944 as they pressed on to defeat the enemies. Learn more about World War II history during 1944 and the stories of those who served in my World War II trilogy, Our Service, Our Stories, Volumes 1, 2, and 3. The books are available for purchase on my website, ronaldpmay.com. To contact me for questions or to schedule me for a speaking engagement, email me at ron@ronaldpmay.com. Also, be sure to check out all my other videos on my YouTube channel at World War II History and Stories with Ron May. Please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. See you next month for our Episode 4, featuring the events and stories of April 1944, World War II at 80.